Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Desert Tiger podcast. Today I couldn't be more excited because I have Mr. Gordie Johnson of Big Sugar fame here on today's episode. We're going to be talking a little bit about the band's music, the late and great Garry Lowe, who the band is going to be playing a tribute show for tomorrow night, that being Friday, December 28th in Toronto, Ontario. And of course, we're going to be talking about the future of the band as well. They've got a little bit of a space rock thing going on up in the future. You guys are going to want to hang on till the end of the episode to hear all about that. So, of course, we're going to jump in. We're going to play a few tunes. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have a great conversation with Gordie today. So, I hope you guys are ready for this episode of the DTP.
Music, athletics, arts, and entertainment. The Desert Tiger Podcast with Colton Geschwantner.
But she gone 11. Lucky like a star, like we name number 7. Work with Cardinal, the one Drake and Kevin. She no want heaven, she no want heaven. Everything that she want, I got her engine a revving. Now we she want, it's like 24/7. And she's alright. Alright, I think she checked me, but she's checking for Garry Lowe. And that little bit of alright would never let it show. Because she knows she's a little bit of alright that I've been missing. Just a little bit of alright. Little bit of alright that I've been missing. A little bit of alright. Alright that I've been missing. Just a little bit of alright.
She's a little bit of alright, little bit of alright, little bit of alright. She's a little bit of out of sight. She's a little bit of alright. She rub it all night. Little bit of alright, rub a dub it all night. Little bit of alright. Now brother friendly, let's go blaze up the mic, yeah.
Yes, me brethren, love this little girl. Like we gone straight to heaven and think she's a 10, but she gone a 11. Lucky like a star, like we name number 7. Run with Cardinal, the one Drake and Kevin. She no one heaven, she no one heaven. A sugar where she want, we got that engine her heaven.
We she want.
That's like 24/7, and she's
A little bit of alright, just a little bit of alright. Kensington's a little bit of alright. Kensington's a little bit of alright. Flemington don't shoot up the night, yeah.
The Desert Tiger Podcast.
We are here with Gordie Johnson, the vocalist, the main idea man behind Big Sugar. How is it going today, Gordie?
It's going all right.
I love it. And of course, today we are here to discuss that you guys are going to be doing a show for a long-time member of the band of Big Sugar, one Mr. Garry Lowe.
We're paying tribute to the guy.
Yes.
Everybody who's involved in the gig has, we've crossed paths with at some point in our career, from the very recent to the very long ago. People who've either played in the band with us or even just people who have influenced us, like Leroy Sibbles and Willie Williams, people like that. Just seeing all these people come together to play our music and pay tribute to Garry Lowe is very touching.
You guys have quite the group of musicians getting together for this. The Bare Naked Ladies, Broken Social Scene, I Mother Earth, Danko Jones, the Downquin Sound Clash. It's quite the collection and the eclectic array of different musicians that will be paying tribute to the late Garry Lowe.
Well, it's kind of cool too, because we're taking, various individuals from these groups and putting them in unlikely combinations and playing songs Garry loved to play, different Big Sugar songs or classic reggae songs, what have you. So it's quite inspiring to see, Tyler from the Bare Naked Ladies playing with Leroy Sibbles and Danko Jones singing with Maestro Fresh West, whatever the various combinations are going to be, it is going to be quite entertaining.
Yes, that's one combination that I feel would be very, very interesting. The Danko and Maestro, I think, could have a very good energy between the two of them.
I think that is fixing to be one epic moment of the show. One of many, I'm sure.
Yes, agreed. So let's touch on exactly what did Garry Lowe mean to the band, and how did he end up coming into the fold? Because he wasn't exactly one of the founding members of the group, was he?
No, I'm the founding member of the group. That's it. It's always been my creative vehicle, and I've included other people along the way. And rather than just like hire employees and tell them what to play, it's the sum of its parts. And so as my creative direction has changed, I've brought different people into the group that accentuated that. You know, I mean, so I wouldn't ask someone to come in the group and not do what they do. You know, when Mr. Chill was in the group, he brought rhythm and blues and soul and his whole wealth of musical knowledge to the experience. And he learned to do some other things too. Yeah, I mean, he came to be playing reggae and ska and whatnot. So it was an experience for all of us to grow in, which we did. But Garry is somebody who, you know, in my early days, I really idolized as a bass player, and just as a presence, I was just like a huge fan of his before I knew him. I had no fantasies of even having him in a band or being in a band with him. I was just like, man, this guy is the bomb. Every reggae gig I go to, there's this guy who plays bass you would not believe. I loved his playing as much as the most famous people you could name, and he was just a local guy. I couldn't believe it. So, you know, when I eventually came to have an opportunity to ask him to join the band, you know, believe me, man, I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, I hope he says yes, because wow, I can't believe I'm doing this, you know.
And what led to that opportunity? Was it just like some connections within the scene that you eventually were able to get the opportunity to ask him, or how did that come about?
It could not have been more tenuous. I had suffered the frustration of playing with bass players who were not up to the task for the last time, and I fired a guy at the end of a gig, and I was just like, man, this has just gone on too long like this. And let me see, how'd this go down? I called Kit Johnson. He's a fantastic bass player in Canada, and, you know, played blues and folk music and all kinds of stuff. And I played with him a lot in Toronto. And I called to beg him one more time. I was like, Kit, you got to save me, man. You got to help me out. And Kit, in his wisdom, said, you know, what you need to do is stop beating up bass players and making them play like Garry Lowe. Why don't you just hire Garry Lowe? Which is like saying, you know, why don't you just ask the Easter Bunny to join your band? Like, well, how do you do? I can't do that. How am I going to do that? And he said, well, Garry doesn't have a phone, but maybe if I call Paul Corby, I think Paul Corby knows where Garry hangs out, and if he sees Garry, we'll try to get him to call you. I thought, this is never going to happen. So you're going to phone a guy who's going to go look for a guy who doesn't have a phone and tell him to somehow get on someone else's phone and call me at a hotel where I don't live. Yeah, this sounds like this is really going to happen. And 15 minutes later, he was calling me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like something where it's like, you know what, maybe in like a month or two, I might bump into this guy and maybe he'll be willing to make a phone call, but then just bam, just like that. That's incredible.
Yeah, and then it was very fast track after that.
Okay, so were you already trying to progress the sound of Big Sugar towards that reggae style that you guys sort of adapted on those 95 EPs, Dear MF and Ride Like Hell, and then once you guys like got into Hemi-vision, was that something you were already progressing into, or was that something once you actually got into the band where it was just natural having someone of his talent?
Well, if you listen to our first two records, you'll hear a lot of reggae bass lines already in. If you know reggae music at all, I mean, there's some real classic. Like we weren't hiding them in the mix somewhere, you know. I mean, we're singing blues lyrics over, you know, late 80s dancehall reggae bass lines and classic rock steady bass lines that were, you know, already in common parlance in reggae music. Rock fans just didn't recognize them, so it's not like anybody was going, oh, wow, I really like the reggae vibes.
Yeah.
Once you got a guy with a lion's mane of dreadlocks in the band, all of a sudden it sounds like reggae. It was like, well, we were already doing that, but that's cool. So when Garry, you know, joined the group, it also allowed us to dig a lot deeper into those things without having to explain them. You know, like I found myself continually trying to get guys to listen to this stuff and incorporate it, and it just wasn't coming naturally. Whereas with Garry, that we just stopped talking about it. It's like, hey man, here's the chords to this song. I was thinking it would go like this. Garry would play, and I'd be like, well, I guess that's how the bass part goes. You know, that's it.
So it just made the writing process that much smoother then.
Well, yeah, because I was writing to people's strengths. You know, I knew what everybody in the group was good at, and so I made sure that became part of what we were rocking. You know?
Mm-hmm. And of course, we're going to have you guys rocking very soon to another one of the classic Big Sugar tunes. Of course, these songs that we're listening to today come off of a reimagination of some of the classic Big Sugar tracks that they did, about back in 2014. The album was called Yard Style. So if you're enjoying this version of the Big Sugar music, maybe you guys can go out and check that album. Of course, we're going to be talking about other things that they have in the future, and of course, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the late, great Garry Lowe, who, of course, they're going to be putting on that amazing sounding tribute show for. I mean, like I said earlier, that combination of the Maestro Fresh Wes and Mr. Danko Jones, oh my goodness, if anybody who's listening to this somehow manages to get video of this, please, please, please send it my way, because I need to hear this, and I am going to be on the West Coast, unfortunately, because that's where I live, and hey, I'm not complaining. That's just the way that life works out. So my loss is somebody else's gain, and hopefully that somebody is nice enough to throw a little bit of video on the internet so that the rest of us can join in and celebrate in the celebration of life of one Mr. Garry Lowe. Rest in peace, his beautiful soul. So of course, like I said, we're going to be jumping into another track off of Yard Style. Good work, Colton. Alright, so the second song that I'm going to be playing is definitely not the song that I said would be my Desert Island Big Sugar song, but it's definitely one of the classics that I enjoy very much, and I'm sure many of you do as well. This song is called I Want You Now.
And I want you now.
You've once said that Garry was once one of your greatest musical contributors. So,
Yep.
seeing how like you were writing people's pieces and sort of coming in mind, how much value and how much like did he add to the creative process once he was a part of it? Like, how much did that take off of your shoulders?
Well, like I said, the word I used was collaborators.
Yeah.
In that it really was collaborative in that, like I just said, if I wrote something, I could show him the bass line I had in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it was going to get filtered through Garry fingers, and it was just going to sound like classic rocksteady reggae music,
Mm-hmm.
and I was good with that. So
Okay.
I kind of counted on him to bring that thing to it, no matter what notes I wrote. And there are some, Garry also, for being such an amazing player on his instrument, he also had no ego about it. The two of us would sit in the studio with a bass, and if he didn't feel the bass part or didn't get it or didn't understand it, I played it. And
Mm-hmm.
if I wrote it and I was killing it, but the way Garry played it was just different and better, then Garry played it. And we just I don't ever remember having a conversation of, hey man, I hope it's cool with you, but I kind of put the bass part on here already. Is that, I got to be careful because musicians all have egos, and Garry didn't. He just didn't. He just wanted it to be a great song, and he looked forward to playing that bass line every night, and he really brought it. So he adapted his playing to some bass lines that I had written, And so it was a great cooperative, living, breathing musical relationship.
Did you and Garry communicate much during the hiatus years in between Brothers and Sisters and Revolutions Per Minute?
No.
No.
Zero.
Ooh, wow.
Actually, not at all. Not one word was spoken, and not for any reason except that we were both out living our lives and doing what we were doing. But when we got back together, it really was like no time had passed for us. We had always had kind of we didn't talk a lot. It wasn't a verbal kind of relationship. I mean, we spoke to each other, but it wasn't, if I didn't talk to Garry for a month, it was like no time had passed. We'd just pick it up right where we left.
Awesome. Well, did you find that was sort of the way you felt also returning to the musical style of Big Sugar? Because Grady is a little bit more hard rock than less reggae and R&B. So did you feel that it was something that you naturally just came back into right away and you were feeling it?
Yeah, because it was just, it had different ingredients. It was, there's a harmony that happens. I don't mean like singing harmony, but there's a harmonious thing that happens with those ingredients. You can have Italian food without garlic in it, but you can have Chinese food with garlic in it. It doesn't taste the same. It still has garlic in it,
Mm-hmm.
So that, I just combined different elements. Big Sugar had a whole different recipe for how we made sound. Grady has its own recipe for how it makes sound. We just did a gig over the weekend, and it's like throwing a match on gasoline. That's kind of what it does. Whereas Big Sugar is a slow burn. It's there for the long haul. You can just the groove gets going, and then you just see what happens.
Okay. All right. So earlier this year, you guys released a collection of tracks entitled Icon. You were the one who curated and chose the music for this album. Is there a certain idea or process that you went behind choosing these songs in the order that they would go on the album?
No, and let me clarify. I didn't call myself an icon. You make it sound like you guys had this great idea to call yourself an icon. Universal Music puts out a CD every year of different artists, and it's sort of a historical look back at that artist's career, and so we were very honored to be called and tapped on the shoulder, and they said, "Hey, you're an icon. We want to put out this CD. What songs do you think should go on it?" I'm like, "Wow, really? Really?
Okay. Yes. So,
really?
sorry.
Really? Okay." So I was, it came as a surprise, and it was like, okay, well, I guess what if you're, I just try to think to myself, okay, if I'm going on a camping trip and you stop at a store on the highway and you grab a couple of CDs to play in the boombox at the cottage, what Big Sugar songs need to be on that CD? So it was that mindset. I tried to grab something from every record and put it on there. But yeah, no, it wasn't like I masterminded and curated my own iconic status. One day I was a con, the next day I was an icon. I don't know when it changed.
Yes, that's definitely not how I meant to do it. I just was trying to acknowledge that you were the ones that selected the tracks. I definitely did not lead into the fact that it was part of the Icon series that they have.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so thank you for clarifying about that. Right. For among those songs, of those cabin songs, which one do you feel like would mean the most to you if you were sitting in a cabin, just hanging out, and you had to pick one Big Sugar song?
Oh, I don't know. I actually don't spend that much time camping or in a cabin, so I mean, I had to live vicariously while making that decision. I guess All Hell for a Basement is a great, like, hoist your beer up in the air kind of song, or digging a hole maybe. I don't know.
I agree with All Hell for a Basement. I think that would be my selection.
I tend to not be partying to my own music, just so you know. Also, as much as I believe I am an icon, I also don't party to my own iconic body of work.
This is fair. I mean, there's only a certain point where you can only listen to the song so many times, and then you just don't even want to play them yourself.
Well, there aren't any songs that we play that we don't want to play. I'm proud to still say that, we only play the songs that we still have a feeling for.
Good.
Yeah.
One last question, and then I will let you free, Mr. Gordie Johnson. What does the future hold for Big Sugar and Gordie Johnson?
Well, we've got a new record. We've spent the last 2 years making it, built a studio, and, life has certainly served us some obstacles, so it took us a while to get it done. But I'm pretty proud. I think we've come up with a work with a singular intent and sound, and I think having to survive adversity has certainly led to we had to really want to make this record, because believe me, there was a lot of reasons to quit in the midst of it, and we just don't do that. We just didn't quit. We try to turn everything around and make it positive, and I feel like we have done that. It's a space rock opera, if anyone's listening. Ooh. But I don't know what I'm not sure what that's going to do for our icon status. They might revoke it. I don't know.
Recalling all Big Sugar Icon CDs.
Yeah,
we had no idea that they planned a space opera.
So well, we'll see when it's out in circulation how people respond. But it's all of the songs ended up being written around a central theme, and it's kind of a continuous story thread that goes through all of it. We didn't start out with that in mind. It just ended up being how it went. And I also have a wealth of recordings of Garry's playing that from over the years that have never been released. So I would really love to dig into those and find ways to get those in circulation as well.
That could be very interesting.
Yeah, I've got 2 songs ready to go now, but I have dozens of hard drives with great moments over the decades of Garry's playing that I'd like to share with people.
Well, hopefully at some point we can have that collection of treasured, hidden Garry Lowe moments, and otherwise, I look very, very forward to the reggae space opera that is the next Big Sugar album.
Yeah. Far out. All right, man. I gotta get back in the lunar module.
All
I'll
right.
talk to you soon.
Me as well. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers. So, as I'm sure you can already tell, today's episode is going to be a little bit shorter than most of you are used to. Hopefully, that doesn't make you too angry. Hopefully, nobody starts flipping a table or anything too crazy. I mean, come on now. But I personally want to go ahead and thank Gordie Johnson for joining me here on this episode. This being episode 50 of the Desert Tiger podcast. My goodness, we actually reached 50. Oh! And to think that number 50 was one of the marquee 90s, 2000s Canadian singers is I'm so blessed and so thankful for every opportunity that this show gives me. And the fact that Gordie was willing to sit down and discuss the life of someone who he treasured very much and someone who was very close to him. I am very thankful that he was willing to do that. And of course, I'm also very thankful for the discussions of Grady, what's in the future for Big Sugar, space rock opera, yeah! I mean, I myself have already gone ahead and hit following on Spotify so that I know exactly when that is going to drop. You guys probably, if you are interested at all in the words space rock opera or anything else we spoke about, it all entailing to that subject, you should probably also go to Spotify and hit follow on that because it's going to be amazing. If you happen to have the opportunity to catch the tribute show to the late and great Garry Lowe, please go ahead and treat yourself to that, my East Coast listeners. Those of you who are in Toronto, trust me, you will not be disappointed. Members of Bare Naked Ladies, the Bedownquin Sound Clash, Danko Jones, Maestro Fresh West. There's going to be all sorts of different musicians joining together to celebrate not only Big Sugar's music, but of course the life of an amazing Canadian musician who left a giant impact on the scene and everything that he touched. I, of course, also want to go ahead and thank you guys, the listeners of the Desert Tiger podcast, for tuning in to this episode 50 of the DTP, and of course, any other episode that you have taken the time to listen to. I am extremely thankful. From episode 1 with Danny Duggan all the way to episode 50 here with Gordie Johnson of Big Sugar. It's been a very exciting journey with you guys, and I know I've missed a couple weeks, but I assure you, 2019, there will be no missed episodes. In fact, I plan on bringing you guys bonus episodes. We have a ton of interviews already lined up. Next week, I'm going to be bringing you the alt-pop duo In the City. We're going to have a great conversation with them. I had a fantastic time talking to both members of the group about everything that they have going on. So I'm very excited for you guys to hear next week's episode as well. So if you are a new listener of the podcast, or maybe you're somebody who has actually yet to hit the follow or subscribe button, maybe this is the time. Maybe today is the day that you want to do that, because subscribing is the best way to find out about when we have a new episode dropping. Of course, our social media is also a very good way to keep up to date with everything that is going on in the DTE universe. And if you guys want to take that extra step to show your dedication, your love towards Desert Tiger, all things that we do here, you can go ahead and pick yourself up a Desert Tiger t-shirt, just like so many of our listeners have already gone ahead and done. Our web store is going to be up and running very soon, but if you don't want to wait for that, of course you can email the podcast or you can hit us up on any of our social platforms. They are incredibly easy to find. Seriously, just look up Desert Tiger Entertainment or Desert Tiger Podcast in Facebook. We're probably going to be the top thing that pops up, maybe like the top, I have no idea. We're gonna be there. That is the way to get your hands on a shirt. As soon as that web store is up and running, I'm gonna have the links on all of our social sites, and I'm gonna have that right here for you. I'm gonna tell it to you right here, like we do every week. Every week, we're gonna communicate a little bit. It's gonna be beautiful. But of course, until then, have yourselves a wonderful new year. I hope that 2019 brings you wonderful memories and moments, and that you achieve everything that you want to do, because you can achieve whatever it is you set your mind to. It's a wonderful, wonderful world. Alright, you guys, I will see you next week with my guest in the city. Until then, bye-bye!